this Elon Musk attempted takeover, which will not stand.
Democrats and the D.C. media are furious about Elon Musk trying to cut government, starting with foreign aid.
Going after U.S. aid? This is so preposterous.
On the campaign trail, Musk talked about government waste.
And the Department of Government Efficiency is going to fix that.
Now, Musk has acted fast, but even if he succeeds in killing U.S. aid, that's less than 1% of the federal budget. So can Musk's department really reform our bloated government? More efficient government's been promised before, but it's never, ever happened. Government always grew bigger and less efficient. The bureaucrats' endless rules will make things tough for DOGE, which is why many say,
rename DOGE DOA, dead on arrival.
We're going to cut $2 trillion from the budget. It's a joke.
Reformers have long tried to reduce spending growth by mocking some of it.
We're spending $700,000 studying how male parrots attract a female.
And more than $100,000 to study finger snapping. The National Science Foundation actually said they were inspired to do this by Marvel villain Thanos. Your government actually paid $118,000 to conclude varying friction between fingers alters the performance of a snap. These YouTubers did a similar test at no cost to taxpayers. Your government also spent hundreds of thousands of dollars
to study whether Neil Armstrong, when he stepped on the moon, said, "One small step for man," or "one small step for a man."
NASA says no A is audible in the recordings.
It's one small step for man.
I don't hear an extra A either, but we paid the National Science Foundation to do that expensive study that concluded ambiguity exists. The list of their stupid spending goes on.
$10,000 that was given to the Bearded Ladies Cabaret to fund ice skating shows about climate change.
Cut it all. But even if they cut all the silly spending, it won't come close to eliminating our $2 trillion a year deficit. Where are the bigger cuts?
We need to cut corporate welfare.
Chris Edwards edits the Cato Institute's Downsizing Government website. What would you cut first?
The first thing I would cut, the federal government spends over $1 trillion in subsidies to state and local governments, K-12 school funding, school lunch funding. This is all activity that should be funded by state and local governments and not the federal government.
The feds even pay for junk food.
Taxpayers are funding chocolate bars and candy and cake. State governments have asked to be able to eliminate junk food in their programs.
And they're not allowed to?
They're not allowed to.
Then there's the government's stockpile of unused buildings.
An unbelievable 300,000 buildings.
Many are underused. Hallways and offices sit empty. On top of that, the feds own most of the land in the West. Most of it.
We don't know the market value. It is in the trillions. So the federal government could really make a big dent on federal government debt if it sold a lot of that land.
But they don't. Instead, they spend millions buying more. At least now, President Trump is making some cuts. Trump ended DEI programs, told the workers don't come in, but he's still paying them.
That is very difficult to fire federal workers.
He had a TV show where the punchline was,
"You're fired, go."
And they just were. But that's not government.
I think we're going to see major reforms on the federal bureaucracy this time around.
Maybe. Until then, Elon Musk is working around the bureaucracy. Since government workers are so hard to fire, he sent an email to almost all of them offering 8 months paid leave if they just quit. But even if Trump fired every federal worker, that still wouldn't come close to eliminating our deficit because politicians won't touch the biggest spending.
Unless we are going to talk about Medicare and Social Security reforms, cutting back on government waste is rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
The big one is stuff that goes to old people like me, Medicare and Social Security, which are going broke.
It should be easy to start cutting wealthy people off the program.
But so far, the president says no.
Under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security.
If they won't cut Medicare or Social Security, or defense, or Medicaid, and they can't cut interest payments, eliminating the deficit is nearly impossible. On your website, you list 14 big cuts, but that's just $480 billion, less than a tenth of the budget. That's not going to do it.
Trump does not have to solve the entire deficit problem in his 4 years in office, but he's got to get the ball rolling.
Getting the ball rolling means cutting enough that our economy could outgrow our debt. We don't have to balance the budget today, just change the trajectory. But how can the private sector grow when there are so many regulations?
SpaceX had to do the study to see if Starship would hit a shark. And I'm like, it's a big ocean, you know. There's a lot of sharks. It's not impossible, but it's very unlikely.
Eventually, SpaceX got a pass on the sharks.
And then we thought, okay, now we're done. And they said, but what about whales? I'm like, it goes on and on. And then there's like, well, what if the rocket goes underwater, then explodes, and then the whales have hearing damage? Like, this is real.
Maybe DOGE will change things. Hope so. Today's rules and spending are absurd. Can they be reformed? Chris Edwards says,
it can be done.
I'm skeptical. On the other hand, Donald Trump and Elon Musk sometimes do surprising things.
Take over, Elon. Just take over.
We here at Stossel TV are a private business, so we don't waste money like the government does. If you want to help us produce more videos, please click that button.